dear audience and Facebook Live viewers. We welcome you from another episode of our program focused on literature and arts from Planet 87.6 Islamabad. Planet FM 87.6 Islamabad, in fact it is. Today we have with us in our studios, we always invite to our studios very promising, very shining personalities from contemporary Urdu literature and Pakistani literature, and today we are honored by the very revered presence of Sultan Nasir Nawaz Sahab. Sultan Nasir Nawaz Sahab has a prolific career as a civil servant of Pakistan, and in addition to this, he has a long way on the journey of Urdu Nazm. He is a bright name, a very promising a name that has his own hallmark among contemporary Pakistani Urdu Nazm. Sultan Nasir Nawaz Sahab, we welcome you in today's program.
Thank you so much. I'm so privileged and honored to be here and to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your time, Sultan Sahab. I have been reading your poems in Tastir and other magazines for quite a lot, but it was again fate schemes, plans things in its own way. So I haven't come across I don't know much about your life, nor do our viewers and listeners know. So first of all, I would like you to share important marks from your biography. Where were you born, and where did you get your education, and how you came into this profession, civil servants of Pakistan, and how did you discover yourself apart from as a poet?
I mean, I think there are so many questions in this one question, and I was born in a small village, a far-flung village in the district Dera Ismail Khan, and the village is named as Juma Sharif. So I was born in 1980 in a village which was without electricity and without running water, and there was no school, no even primary school in our village. And there was a primary school in the adjoining village, but our father preferred to send us to another town called Kulachi. So we were educated there. I got my elementary education from a small a town, now a tehsil called Kulachi. So that's how the journey started. The area of Dera Ismail Khan, which is commonly known as Daman. So I was born and raised there. And the term Daman, for the listeners who are not aware of the term Daman means the area falling between the mountain of Suleiman range and the Indus River. So the area falling between these two, landmarks is called Daman, which has the present area of district Dera Ismail Khan and Tank and some areas of Dera Ghazi Khan also. So I was born and raised in there, and we speak Saraiki. And I was educated in government schools throughout my career. I never got an opportunity to get to a private school at that time. And it was a lovely experience. I mean,
and at that time, I remember as we are not very much distanced in a lifeline. Private schooling wasn't very much in fashion in those days.
It wasn't. In fact, it wasn't. But well, I mean, there were some different sorts of schools in the big cities. It was in fashion, and there were certain schools which were considered to be very prestigious and things like that. But honestly speaking, Munir, I tell you, I speak my heart out that I really cherish the experiences that I had.
Exactly.
I mean, the experiences of sitting on that tart rug,
yes.
and at times without that tart. So
yes.
I really cherish that experience, and now when I have gone through, I mean, many things and all the privileges and all the things that at times the people dream of, I really cherish those experiences, and I think that it would have been a great deprivation for me had I not been gone through those experiences.
We should have missed a lot of great experience in our lives. Yes, I still remember, as you said, I still remember winter days of my class when we looked for some patch of tart that didn't have a hole in it because we tried to save ourselves from that chill coming from that.
So and probably we had an opportunity of looking at the life a little bit more closer.
Realistic view of life.
Raw life, and very close to it and close to nature and not artificial. So there were problems, there were issues, but today I think at least I cherish it.
Iqbal says कि फितरत खुद ब खुद करती है लाले की हिना. It is how the nature trained us on our way to success.
But it is risky. I think it is risky in the sense that when you leave the people to the course of nature, you're not sure which way the nature is going to mold them. So always safe to take care of the kids and to try to bring them up in a way that they are not wholly and solely dependent on the mercy of nature, but you have your role also. But in our times it was different. Yeah.
But you have to listen to your inner voice.
That's
That is
it,
the
yeah,
true guide.
yeah.
You have to see where is your inclination, where you are inclined to go.
That's
So
correct.
then nature never betrays you, I feel.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, at least to some extent, we should trust in nature. We should trust in
That gut feeling plus nature.
Yeah, I mean, training is important.
It's important.
Education is, of course, important. The civilizational efforts are important. But nevertheless, the importance of nature should not be forgotten. I mean, that should go along.
That's right. And you should always have an open window, a personal open window towards nature.
Yeah, that's correct.
You should never leave that. You should never close.
You should maintain at least one connect. With nature. That connect should always remain there. I mean, there should not be a total disconnect.
So where did the change come? This cosmopolitan Sultan Muhammad Nasir, where did it emerge?
Well, I don't think I'm that
Much
that cosmopolitized as such. But yeah, I mean, I from Dar Ismail Khan to Bhakkar, I got shifted in my early education before my matriculation. Then I did my graduation from Punjab University and from Bhakkar, from Government College Bhakkar.
Okay.
And we had some wonderful teachers there. And again, the people who were teaching us, they were very close to nature. I studied Persian and Arabic, initial Arabic from my father. Then there was a great personality named Professor Bashir Ahmed Bashar, rest in peace, and he was our teacher. Then I got first position from Punjab University, and it was for the first time.
What was your discipline? In which discipline did
in
you?
humanities. In humanities, yeah. And it was for the first time in the history of District Bhakkar that a student got the first position in Punjab University.
Wow,
and there were
excellent.
90,000 students in that time.
And that Punjab University meant whole of the Punjab.
Whole of Punjab. Excluding some areas of Sultan.
Yes.
It was like there was no university in Gujarat and Sargodha and all these universities.
The colleges of the capital were also affiliated with.
Yeah,
the
they were
Punjab
all
University.
affiliated with Punjab University. There were like 90,000 students. So then I moved in 2001 into Namal. I got my admission for Masters in English, Linguistics and Literature in Namal. I think that really made the difference. That really made the difference.
It was 2001.
In 2001.
Okay.
So I graduated, I did my post-graduation in 2003. And yeah.
And I was there right after you, 2003
Really?
to 5. I was there in the same degree in evening course.
Okay, so you joined in 2003.
2003, yes.
Okay.
I was a little late in my studies in education, but
Okay.
I was there in 2003. So we have been we have been chasing each other throughout our lives.
Yeah,
Now
our rates
today,
might have crossed.
radio has joined us, combined us together in this studio.
Yeah, absolutely. And we might not be knowing that, after 2 long decades, more than 2 decades, we will be together again. This is how life works. And it's a small world.
Sure.
It's a small world, yeah. So.
And how did you come into this civil services?
Well,
How did you join it?
after my post-graduation from Namal, I started teaching. So I started teaching in a private college in Dar Ismail Khan for a couple of months. Then I got a lectureship in Hazara University, Mansehra. So that was my first proper professional experience. It was a wonderful experience. I still, being in
Teaching
civil
teaches
service,
you a lot, no doubt.
I mean, that was the time I really cherish as far as my professional life is concerned, because you always interact with fresh minds, and the people come up with new ideas, and they tell you things and stories that you have never studied in the books and all that, and it was a wonderful experience. But this is a long story how I left the university. But to cut the long story short, the day I was expecting my termination letter, I tendered my resignation letter.
Okay. Very
So
good.
before I could, because some things,
Because you could be thrown out, before you could be thrown out, by then you pulled yourself out of it.
But it was a lovely experience. I'm still connected with the students that I had and the colleagues that I have.
This is I always say that our real earning wealth fortune of life is this our students.
Correct.
They remember us, and students remember you even if they learn one sentence. And sometimes we are in classrooms, we say so many things and we don't even remember. Years afterwards, a student comes and says, "Sir, flaw sentence of you changed our lives."
Yeah, absolutely. And at times that sentence is not even a planned sentence.
And we don't even remember that.
Yeah, because it's not planned. It is just a consequence of all the things that you are talking
Yeah,
about.
in some
and the
context that
discussion
might be
within
there
the
in some context.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
Then yeah.
and another thing that when we remain in that company of those young people, as I am there teaching BS students, university graduates, we remain young
You
and fresh.
remain young, absolutely,
Sheikh
absolutely.
Sadi
yeah.
said, "Jamale hamne shindar mana sarkar,
Uh-huh.
bagarna man hamam khawkam ke
Aman
hastam."
Khawkam ke Hastam. Absolutely, absolutely.
So it is a multiple blessing on multiple levels.
Correct.
So please.
Yeah, so afterwards, when I left university, I took that decision. And then I decided that now, Nasir, try to be on the other side of the table. So in a country like Pakistan, to be on the other side of the table, so the ladder that you have, there are very limited ladders. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have many opportunities of
Not so
social
many
mobility.
openings, yes.
So one of those couple of openings that we have, and I at that time had, was to join civil services, to make an effort for that. So I made an effort, and I attempted for CSS exam, and in my first attempt, I was allocated to Federal Board of Revenue. And then my career of civil services started. I appeared in 2005, and my career started from 2006. I joined in 2006, and then I remained posted at many stations, like and got training in Lahore and Karachi, and then Islamabad, Sargodha, and Sialkot, and then Islamabad and Peshawar, and DL Khan.
And still going on, and now
going
you have
on and on.
happened to join Pakistan Academy of
Yeah,
Writers as Director General,
yeah.
and I welcome you because
Thank
this
you.
is a focal
Thank you.
position for whole of Pakistani writers and
Yeah.
poets,
Yeah.
and this is a very focal position because you have to be very careful. Being in civil service is another type of experience, but being here among the writers of Pakistan is another type of experience because this doesn't allow that bureaucratic attitude.
Correct.
At least
Correct.
here you have to be more on the friendlier side,
Yeah.
more on the serving side. So how is your experience going here?
It's wonderful experience. I'm lucky to have an amazing personality as my boss, Professor Dr. Najiba Arif. Such a wonderful personality. I mean, such a multi-dimensional personality, and with such a huge vision for making real difference with the help of literature and changing the mind of the people. So I'm learning a lot, and because I already had some connection. Despite my civil services experience, I tried to keep my window of literature always open so that I can, when I'm tired of office and go back home, I get some fresh air from literature, from poetry and novels and all these things. So now I had an opportunity of sitting at a very important position in an organization that takes care of literature. It's a different experience because I was working as a tax collector throughout my service, and this is, as you said, a totally different experience. It is different, but I'm really enjoying it. And I have an opportunity of meeting many writers and poets and talking to them and exchanging ideas.
This is another level of learning as well, and your personality grooming. It plays very vital, important.
I mean, you keep learning.
Keep learning.
There's never end to learning. I mean, you never learn enough. You can never say that I have learned enough and now there's a full stop. I mean, you keep learning and learning.
Sure. Whole of the life goes on like this, and a day spent without learning is a day that I don't count in my life. We don't count in our lives.
That's correct.
And the learning is on many levels. When you accept yourself as a learner, whole of the cosmos, as Paulo Coelho said, conspires for your learning.
And probably, it starts teaching you.
When did you discover yourself as, during all this roller coaster of your life, as we have told, going from one place to another, switching over jobs, and then this poetry, I say, Salim Ahmed said कि नज़्म पूरा आदमी मांगती है.
That's correct.
नज़्म पूरा आदमी मांगती है, and your nazm is very prolific, very touching, has a compacted of its own, makes a universe of its own among a great line of Urdu poetry, as some of the poems that I have studied on your page.
Thank you.
So, where do you place this? Because I am chiefly concerned with that. Most of us are chiefly concerned with that. Sultan, Muhammad Nawaz Nasir, who is composer, creator of this poetry. And I'll talk to you about this one. First, let us know, when did you start composing these beautiful, eloquent musical poems?
Thank you so much, and thank you for all these beautiful words that I don't know I deserve these words or not. Well, it was from my early childhood, because I come from the family of Sultan Bahu, so there was a poetic tradition in the family, a very strong poetic tradition. I mean, my maternal grandfather was a poet in Persian and Urdu, and my grandfather was also, a scholar of poetry, and my father was also a poet, and my mother almost had memorized the Safaralish, the Qissa Saiful Muluk of Mia Muhammad Baksh. So there was an atmosphere of poetry.
There was, if you are from Sultan Bahu's family, that's very great news for me. Risala Ruhi, reading Risala Ruhi is a great tradition.
It is.
That's in Persian.
Yeah, it is in Persian, but that's not poetry.
Yeah, that's prose.
Yeah, yes. It is in prose. It is in Persian prose, because Sultan Bahu penned almost 140 books in Persian. They are not available. About less than 40 books are still available. Rest the people are trying to discover them. And then he has the Abiyat, the famous Abiyat, that every verse, every line ending at Ru.
Yes. And that who has a long story.
Yeah, it has a story.
How was he given it? How was he entitled?
Yeah, it has its own story, and it has, even if you don't go to that spiritual story, it has a psychological effect also. I mean, when somebody says "Ooh," so it creates
an experience of Hanafi as well.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. And who is one of the Ismizat also, yes, which is Allah, Lillah, Lahu, and Hu. So poetry was very common and literature was very common in our family. I started with ghazal, and I don't know if I was like 14 or 15 years of age when I started reading some, things from my father's diaries and my elder brothers and sisters' diaries, and trying to write something. And then I started from ghazal, and then I kept writing ghazal for about some maybe more than 10 years. And it was probably only after 2001, 2002 that I realized that I should gradually switch towards Azad Nazm, because I thought that it gave me more liberty to express myself, and or probably it gave me refuge that I needed. So then I shifted toward
you needed more space to express yourself, and that I think you couldn't find in the what we say, in the limitations of refrain and rhyme and meter.
Maybe I tell you the problem. The problem which happened with my ghazal, it is, I can be wrong, but this is how I analyzed myself with my own work. The problem with my ghazal was that I used to take part in various competitions in school and colleges. So then I made a habit of writing ghazals on Tara Misra.
Yes.
So when you write on Tara Misra, and you know that you have to win a competition, and you have a ghazal of 7 couplets or maybe 9 couplets or 5 couplets, so you have to put in one couplet of tasawwuf and one of politics. So it was a little more artificial for me.
Formulated and
a little more artificial. But I don't think it should be true for everybody, because there are people, even today there are people who are writing wonderful ghazals. There are many people who are writing great ghazals, like there are people like Shahid Zaki and like Saud Usmani, and there are Shaheen Abbas, and they are writing ghazals that really
profound and prolific.
Yeah, they're profound, and they really shake you.
And new images are there as well, new physiology, new
language. But for me, I mean, it's always like what gives you refuge. So for me, probably
is your poetic haven. You found your poetic haven in
your poetic haven. So I found my haven.
But there is always, exploring yourself as a nazm writer is not a single layered experience, because I tell you, as I quoted Salim Ahmed earlier, he said कि nazm पूरा आदमी मांगती है, बल्कि डेढ़ आदमी मांगती है. It means 1.5, because you need to, in ghazal you don't need to contemplate your creative experience, meditate your creative, but in nazm you need to be very artistic, crafty as well, because it's all about craft. It's all about how you craft your poem. We learn from great masters like Munir, Rashid, Miraji, Majid Amjad, and I see the traces of their poems, Akhtar Hussain Jafri Sahab as well, on your poem, though your poem has a distinct air of itself. But I would love to learn if these writers have come across your reading.
Of course they did. I mean, I think on as far as literature is concerned, on me, probably the two classical maestros that had the greatest impact were Sadi because I studied Gulistan from my father in a very tender age, and then Mia Muhammad Baksh. And when I grew up, and when we studied people, I think Iqbal and Rashid, yeah, and Fayyaz. So I was quite late. It was quite late for me to come to move towards Majid Amjad and Miraji and Akhtar Hussain Jafri and all those great maestros of Urdu Nazm. I started, with Rashid.
Rashid catches you.
Yeah.
You, if you are
And
there,
it doesn't leave
yes.
you. It doesn't leave you.
Still,
the beauty.
still.
And I tell you know what? In the case of Rashid, there must be many things that, let me confess, that maybe I don't know its meaning even today.
Mm-hmm.
But I remain in that atmosphere.
Zanjabil ke aadami.
Yeah. I don't know what's the meaning of that. So you don't even when you don't know the mening, the atmosphere catches you.
And there's poetry in him. I
Yeah.
don't know from where. Even the day before yesterday, I was discussing with a friend. We don't know how that poetry emerges in his words, in his life.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing traditional. Most of the times he includes new words, new phraseologies, new type of life. And Rashid, but your poem moves ahead of it. Rashid is no doubt on all of us who take up Nazm as a medium of expression. Rashid creates initial imprints.
Yeah, great.
But we have to move on.
We have to. I mean,
learn and move on.
Learn and move on.
The same formula.
Learn and move on. Never stop. Sky is the limit, and say even sky is not the limit.
Yes,
I mean, there's no limit for the learner.
No.
So when you consider somebody a maestro, or when you accept somebody as your teacher, it does not mean that you are supposed to stop there. So you should utilize the great services and contributions of those people as a ladder, and you should try to become a ladder yourself, so that when the next generation comes, they use you as the ladder and go to a higher place. So I think that's the
whole of that traditional individual talent of
T.S. Eliot. I believe in that. Absolutely. But you have to go through all the way. I mean, I'm a very strong believer in training the people with the classical literature. You should know the classical literature.
Yes.
But you should not stop at it. You should know how to move forward and how to go ahead of the classicism. Yeah.
Because you have to live with your age. So your creative process should relate your age.
And you have to contribute.
I request you, before we go further, I request you to read something.
Oh, sure. I have my book. This is called Kahin Nahi.
Yeah, let me show it to the people first, because we are going live as well. Kahin Nahi, if it appears on your screens, dear viewers, Kahin Nahi is the maiden poetic so far.
And the only so far. So there's a poem, its title is क्या तुम ऐसा कर सकते हो? And it goes like, क्या तुम खुलकर हंस सकते हो? क्या तुम खुलकर हंस सकते हो? ऐसे जैसे अनदेखे जंगल की अनदेखी घाटी में फूल खिले और खिलता जाए।
वाह।
अपनी खुशबू से सरमस्त और अपने आप से भरा भराया।
वाह।
क्या तुम नीर बहा सकते हो?
वाह।
क्या तुम नीर बहा सकते हो? ऐसे जैसे भादों बरखा छम छम बरसे जल थल कर दे, सूखे अंगनान भिगोए लंबे लंबे सुस्त दिनों में हलचल कर दे।
वाह।
क्या तुम पहर दोपहर कभी चुप रह सकते हो?
वाह।
क्या तुम पहर दोपहर कभी चुप रह सकते हो? अपने आप को खाली करके शांत समय में बह सकते हो?
वाह।
ऐसे जैसे सीपी अपने अंदर मोती रखती है
वाह।
और कभी कभी खाली हो जाती है कि नए इम्कान तराशे।
वाह।
क्या तुम दिल पर बारे मोहब्बत सह सकते हो?
वाह।
क्या तुम दिल पर बारे मोहब्बत सह सकते हो? ऐसे जैसे धरती बोझ पहाड़ों का सहती रहती है, धरती जिसके सीने पर पत्थर होते हैं लेकिन कोख से फसलें देती है, जिनसे नस्लें जीवन का गुड़ पैदा करती हैं और आगे बढ़ती हैं। और अगर तुम खुलकर हंस नहीं सकते, सुच्चे नीर बहा नहीं सकते,
क्या
शांत समय में बह नहीं सकते, बारे मोहब्बत सह नहीं सकते, फिर तुम खुद को कैसे जिंदा कहते हो?
वाह, क्या कहने। Wonderful, excellent, exquisite panorama of images, music, lyricism, everything, and the craft, the way you knit it and the way you conclude it, summed it up in the end. Everything was, I think, uh, one of the finest poems I recently heard.
Thank you so much.
We did further our discussion on the same note. When we try to describe modern poetry, especially Rashid Miraji and onwards, we always fall into the terms and terminologies that are of painting.
Correct.
Imagism,
Yeah.
surrealism,
Even
collage,
expressionism, surrealism.
mosaic,
Correct, yeah.
murals. Why is it so? Why is it so? How do we
I don't think
mark a
I don't
line?
think there is much harm in it, because I am a believer in the thing that all these fine arts are very closely connected with each other. Even music has a very strong connection.
It's a very strong connection.
So I am a very strong believer in the presence of music in poetry, and I believe that when music ceases to exist, poetry ceases to exist, because this is what differentiates poetry from non-poetry.
So your poems should present a picture, and that picture should be presented in musical ways.
I mean,
Lyricals should be there.
music makes it memorable, but by music I don't mean that it necessarily has to be in the type of urus that we.
No. Modern.
I mean, it can be of any way.
Actually, let me come straight on it, because this modern verse, post Baudelaire and Mallarmé, post 20th century verse globally, has changed its metrical, prosodical forms. Now we have discovered new lyricism in poetry,
Correct.
new system of sounds in poetry, and that system of sound is very closely related to the pictures presented in it. Your poetry, after
The
listening to it,
images and the imagist movement.
Imagist movement. This imagist movement, this modern poetic explorations, modern prosaic techniques, they have great impression on, and till yourself. Modern poets are the persons, including Rashid Miraji, Fayyaz, वगैरह, who were in a close connection with Western poetics. So this modern poetry was brought out by the people who was, including Majid Amjad as well, who studied a lot of Western poetry and Western philosophy. How you also, because we are connected with Western poetry.
But the important thing is that when we talk about Rashid or Faiz, I mean, or even, of course, Majid Amjad also, they were also connected with their own tradition. So it's not the only Western tradition that they were connected with.
That's what I'm saying, that they are blending. They blend.
You're gradually moving. Look, you're gradually moving towards the global citizenship. So that concept of global citizenship is probably true to literature also. So I mean, if something good is happening in the West, why not to take advantage of it?
And that has become very fast in previous century.
Why not? And why not? But the thing that we should remember is that if we have some strength within our classical tradition,
we shouldn't forget.
We should not forget it. We should not. Because if we forgot it, because look, if we leave something which is happening in West, probably the next generation can catch it. But if we leave something which is coming with all that tradition, and we break the tradition, and we don't move forward, probably the entire tradition is broken.
Sure.
And then the next generation doesn't get the continuity of that tradition, which is important. So, I mean, we should also realize, we should take advantage of what's happening in West and, wherever. But we should also remember the classical tradition that we have. So that our
centuries old classical tradition.
Centuries old.
Arabic and Persian included in it.
It's such a huge leisure and a treasure of such a wonderful
ideological circles there, and the questions of metaphysics there.
And what not? There's everything. But we should move forward, take benefit from it, and move forward. Then take benefit from the
This is always synthetic, sir. This is not unilateral. This is always synthetic. But you shouldn't. You must be rooted in your soil. If you want to go high, even you must be first rooted in your soil.
Absolutely. So try to be tall as you want to be,
without leaving your
raise your height, but don't leave the soil on which your foot should be firmly placed. So it's important to have the connection with your own soil. That is very
You
important.
do a lot of experiments in your poem. I'm saying none of your poem is void of a new experiment. You blend languages. And instead of blending, local language with, you have Punjabi patches in your poem. This is a very unique experience.
Well,
I've never come across so many. I haven't seen it so often as I see it in your poems.
Yeah, I mean, in a couple of poems I tried it, and Because I have a concept of, when we talk about the Azad Nazm, so I have a concept of Azadi, of the freedom, of the liberty. So if I have the license of being a poet of the Azad Nazm, then I take the license of doing whatever I want to do. And trying to, get rid of all the chains and the clutches that we normally had. So if I feel comfortable in, moving with a poem, because what I try to do is that I start a poem, and then I don't try to be very clever with my poem. I leave myself loose and let the poem go, and let the poem decide what it does with me. So it is very rare for me, probably with a very few poems of me, that I decided that this poem is going to have this end. Otherwise, never. I leave it to itself, and I try to follow it. So my belief about the poetry, especially the Azad Nazm, is that you try to enjoy that liberty that it gives you. And trust me, it gives you a lot of liberty. When you leave yourself loose and you try to follow it, and it's like a camel probably who has, a camel in the desert of Najd, who has probably lost, when the camel rider has lost the way, it loses the reins to the camel, and the camel with its sixth sense determines which way to go.
And leaves it on the intuition of the camel.
So at times, the Nazm has its own intuition and its own way to go. So let it go and follow it. So I believe that a Nazm writer shouldn't always be very clever. So you should not necessarily try the Nazm to follow you, rather you should try to follow.
Trust your muse, in short. Trust your muse.
That's correct. Beautiful. Yeah.
You should trust your muse.
So I have tried to trust, and I was not deceived, honestly speaking.
No,
so once you have written it, once you have made a piece of, written it on a piece of paper or on your laptop or in whatever way, then maybe after a month or two you can come back on that poem and you can
make some changes,
work on its craft, and you can make the craft better, because when you are in that feeling of composing, at times you don't take much care of the craft, but gradually you can work on it.
I have got my cue of the program today. This was my take. I wanted this because I put sometimes I overexert on craft, but no, the process is the same as you have told, and not only on Nazm. It applies on whole of the creative circle. Leave yourself on the wings of creativity, and then when you land, you can have a retrospection, you can have a view of it.
And I tell you what, as far as the craft is concerned, or the art is concerned, the art of poetry or whatever way you name it, I think when somebody has passed through the classics, that becomes your second nature.
Misra Kana, you know how to see.
How to make it
form a
more
misra, yes.
How to make it more zoom. So then versification is not your problem.
Not problem.
Then taking care of all, and when you know the placement of the words and you're well aware of it. So especially for the new writers, my message will be that please read
Classics.
Yeah.
Satza, they are masters. Yes.
They cannot be bypassed.
Nashastan, Guftan, what not? What is not there in Persian poetry? I tell you, between you and me now, that is on there as well. I don't read contemporary poetry, Urdu poetry much. Most of the times I live in Attar and Rumi and Nabedil because
we need to move forward. We need to move forward, and I mean, but they should make our foundation. They should, and they are very strong foundation.
And still they have, I tell you, still they have too much to offer, because we don't.
Absolutely.
Even if I start reading Iqbal at times, Peyam-e Mashriq, it gets hold of me. It doesn't let you out. But when again, for experiencing your own creative process, you have to come forward. You have to come in your time. You have to visit them, but you need to come. Visiting them is very necessary.
And keep on visiting them.
Keep on visiting
them. I mean, the books of the classics should be in your reach, and every now and then you should take a book of the classic and read it, and they will give you a new excitement and experience.
You talked about crafting a poem. While crafting a poem, because it's very important. Waller, some people related to Waller, and some say Igor Stravinsky said that poetry is 1% passion and 99% perspiration. 1% passion and 99% perspiration. Whole of discussion has been going around the passion phase. Perspiration, editing, this labor, this is very important.
It's important. I mean, but I don't know what did he mean when he was saying that, but I would like to interpret it in a way that as we were discussing previously, that I mean it's not a one-time activity to work on the craft. Rather, to work on the craft, you have to work for years and years and years, and you keep on going through all those classics and reading the people, so that becomes your second nature. And I don't know what did he mean when he said that it is only one person passion. I don't know.
99% perspiration.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with
Because
this
when
percentage.
I think he might have meant that when we compose lines in a flow, and then we come back, we need to identify where the poem lies in those lines.
That's correct. That's correct.
Sometimes,
And I mean, you should have a very nice dustbin with you, and you should have the courage to
always
clear
full.
the pages. Yeah,
That must be always full.
Yeah. So keep writing. Keep writing. Even if tomorrow it's going to be in the dustbin, keep writing. I mean, the book I have, I don't claim it to be something very perfect, but I mean, it's a selection. Because I was writing, my things were published. I think my first ghazal or nazm was published in 1997 or 98, when I had recently done my matriculation, and the book was published in 2020. So it was a journey of like 23 or 24 years, and the book has about 160 pages, like 80 points, and I have discarded a lot of the things that I wrote. I did not include any ghazal in it. So I mean, you should be courageous enough.
Yes. Without it, because if you let yourself loose, the time won't let yourself loose.
Yeah.
You need to be strict on yourself, and you need to travel more in time. And as you remember, when Eliot composed Wasteland and Pound edited it, and then he wrote a canto, a poem, the title on Wasteland, and he said, I have performed Caesarean on each line.
Wow.
I have performed Caesarean on each line, and it was more than two-thirds of the Wasteland was discarded by Pound. What we have today, even critics say that it would be less ambiguous. It would have been less ambiguous if Pound didn't edit it. But editing is very important. I think editing is very important.
I think it is, yeah, that's correct. It is important. It is important, but I think the good thing is that first you should, when a poet writes something with all that passion and inspiration, so he should probably write it and put it away from his approach, and then pick it after a reasonable time. So that when
you have detached
out-
yourself from that.
when you're detached from that emotional phase, then you should work on it as a critic, and you have to be very cruel with yourself. I mean, there are things which one cannot discard. I mean, because they are very close to our heart. But you should be courageous.
And
enough to
moreover,
make-
these poems are our kids on paper.
Yeah, that's correct.
They are their children, they are offsprings on paper in black and white.
Yeah, but telling one of your child that you're not good enough, it needs a lot of courage. Yeah.
One question more,
Please.
controversial question. Your take on prose verse, Nasir.
Well, let's not talk about prose verse. Let's talk about the element of musicality in poetry. So I am a believer of the element of musicality in poetry. My belief is that poetry ends where music ends. Now, when they talk about the prose verse, and I don't know if they can put in the appropriate level of music in that prose verse, it is justified to me.
Very
And
good.
whatever
Excellent.
name you give it to me.
Excellent.
But if there is no musicality in that, then you can call. I mean, you are aware of the prose of Gulistan. Yaad daram darai yawme jawani ki guzare dashtam dar kuए nazare bamahruई.
Muddati bar boli nek pegamber yayan motek budim.
So and look at that prose. It is as poetic as today's
Poetry,
the prose poems that the people claim. But I think it can be divided of urus. So you can shift to the matras.
Yes.
You can shift to the beats
Yes,
and
yes,
the stress unstressed pattern, whatever pattern you want. But there has to be musicality, and the musicality is what makes poems, memorable. The people can memorize them, because throughout the history until today, poetry is something that can be sung and that can be memorized. If something cannot be properly memorized and cannot be sung, then in my opinion, it ceases to be poetry as such.
But on the other hand, I too feel that the defiers of the prosody, traditional prosody, they claim, and I believe
Right.
that there is a undercurrent music in language itself. that doesn't require any prosody to comply. And in addition to this, there are the images in themselves, they have a world of their own. So if someone could identify that music of idea and music of knowledge, language minus music of prosody meter. So I think he's he's entitled to.
Absolutely. I talked about
Our very dear friend Hamid Zahoor sab sitting out there. He's the one who does it sometimes. I don't know. I don't know. So, sir, we have a queue. It was a wonderful discussion.
Thank
now
you,
we are going for the
good.
news bulletin, and it seemed like we never started and the show has ended. Or discussion can go on like this.
Yeah, I don't know. So much time has passed. I could never realize.
We can go on talking like this till evening, and
yeah.
This is just the start of our discussion. Our discussion on this poems, this world, modern concept of poetry, modern world. We haven't yet talked about your many works that you are doing in Pakistan Academy of Letters. We'll have another session and very soon, inshallah.
Another session, yeah.
Very soon, inshallah. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much. It was such a great play.
Dear audience, Sultan Muhammad Nasir Nawaz Sahab was with us today, and you heard needs no formal conclusion. It was such a prolific talk and such a wonderful experiences, first-hand experiences of creativity, such things that we never find in textbooks, that can only be told by a person who is Mahram-e-Raz, who knows the secret, the inner secrets of this creativity. We look forward to inviting him yet another time, because there's so many things yet left untold, unsaid. Thank you very much for listening to us, staying to us. Allah Hafiz from Radio Planet 87.6, FM 87.6, Islamabad. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. अपना नाम मैं बता देंगे.